The galaxy had grown complacent. Civilizations stretched across countless stars, each convinced that the next threat would be manageable, that nothing could challenge the careful hierarchies they had built. They had forgotten Earth. They had forgotten humans. A small SOS blinked in the void, unnoticed by most. Its signal was faint, almost pleading, yet unmistakably deliberate. To the untrained eye, it might have seemed inconsequential. But somewhere, far across the cosmos, the pulse of a species long underestimated resonated with that signal. The message was simple: help. Or perish, and the universe took notice. In the void beyond, fleets moved with intent and precision, colossal vessels of war that had been dormant for centuries. They had been called the Deathworlders, a species whose name alone had once made empires tremble. Silent hunters of impossible skill, their fleets moved without announcement, traversing light years in minutes. No negotiation, no hesitation, only purpose. And that purpose had been summoned by a signal they could not ignore. The humans who sent the SOS did not know what they had awakened. They were a small contingent, cornered by merciless forces that had underestimated them at every turn. Their ships were damaged, their weapons weak, and their numbers few. Yet, even in the shadow of extinction, they radiated a quiet defiance, a spark that had never been extinguished. The void between stars seemed to shift, bending subtly under the weight of the approaching fleet. Alien sensors strained, calculations faltered, and commanders whispered among themselves, realizing too late that this was not a battle of might alone. Something had changed. Humanity had returned, not in desperation, but in inevitability. On the beleaguered human bridge, eyes scanned the monitors with grim determination. Each flicker of warning, each breach of shields, was met with calm precision. The humans did not panic. They did not pray. They adapted, innovated, and endured. For every calculation the enemy had made, humanity had already anticipated it, not through superior technology, but through instinct honed over millennia of survival. And then, the first lights appeared on the horizon, hundreds of warships, massive and silent, emerging from the depths of hyperspace. The Deathworlder Fleet had arrived. Their engines rippled the vacuum, casting a cold, eerie glow across the debris-littered battlefield. Each vessel was a monument to predation, crafted for efficiency, for domination, for the extinguishing of life, but the humans did not flinch. Their eyes met the stars with the same certainty they had carried through every impossible battle. They were small in number, but immense in courage. One hand hovered over the controls, another brushing a worn emblem, the mark of Earth, the mark of a species that refused to bow. The fleet loomed closer, their weapon systems lighting up the void. Every alien captain, every AI observer, every soldier across the fleet felt the weight of inevitability pressing down. They had been called to destroy. They would witness defiance. They would realize, in the moments before engagement, that humans were never the species to plead or submit. A lone signal echoed through the comms, a human voice, calm, unwavering, a declaration, not of surrender, but of intent. The Deathworlders would learn that every call for help carries a price. And humanity had always been ready to collect it. The void held its breath. The Deathworlder Fleet advanced, dark silhouettes against the scattered light of distant stars. Their weapons glowed faintly, a deadly orchestra poised to strike. Every captain aboard sensed the singular certainty of their mission, annihilation. Yet there was an unease, subtle but undeniable, like a predator aware of its prey's hidden claws. On the human bridge, systems hummed with quiet efficiency. The SOS had been more than a call for help. It was a trap, a test of will, a statement that humanity would not bow. Engineers adjusted shields, rerouted energy, and aligned weapons with practiced precision. Each movement was fluid, a dance of survival instinct and calculated brilliance honed over centuries of struggle. Outside, the void seemed to warp subtly. Alien sensors flickered with anomalies they could not reconcile. Ships that had dominated star systems now hesitated, engines flickering as if the universe itself had shifted under the presence of humans. One by one, calculations failed, trajectories destabilized, and commanders felt that nagging sense of fear that only a species both unpredictable and unstoppable could induce. The lead human vessel activated its experimental drives, not to flee, but to prepare. Pulses of energy rippled along its hull, warping space in tiny, deliberate arcs. Alien scanners strained to track the shifts, only to find targets moving where physics said they could not. Missiles fired from the Deathworlders dissolved into harmless flashes before impact. Energy beams refracted unpredictably. Redirected by systems the humans themselves barely touched, instinct and ingenuity shaping reality around them, the fleet's commanders exchanged calculated glances, recognizing a truth their empires had long ignored: humans did not rely on numbers or firepower alone. Humans adapted. Humans learned. Humans turned the impossible into inevitability. Above the battlefield, one human raised a hand, and the city of debris and ruin that had drifted in orbit along the fleet's path seemed to respond. Fragments of ships, floating wreckage, and shards of derelict satellites aligned into patterns that pulsed with energy, forming barriers, shields, and countermeasures with surgical precision. The Deathworlder Fleet bristled with advanced technology, yet even their systems could not predict, nor counter, the elegance of human ingenuity at work. A silence fell in the fleet's command channels, broken only by frantic recalculations. Every AI tried to compensate, every captain attempted maneuver, but the outcome unfolded beyond their comprehension. The humans had not merely prepared for defense, they had become the environment itself, bending energy, matter, and probability into their advantage. The lead human ship surged forward, lights blazing, engines singing. In that instant, the fleet saw what humans had always been capable of: courage married to intelligence, defiance tempered by patience, and a singular ability to endure where no other species could. For the first time in millennia, the Deathworlders faltered. Their warships, perfected for conquest, now paused mid-strike. Each pulse of energy, each calculated trajectory, encountered resistance not of brute force, but of inevitability. Humans were not just surviving, they were rewriting the terms of engagement, and then, from the center of the human formation, a signal pulsed outward, not a call for retreat, not a plea for mercy, but a message of power. The universe had underestimated humanity. The void trembled. The fleet shivered. And Earth's survivors, small in number but immense in resolve, prepared to remind the galaxy why humans were never to be ignored. The stage was set, the reckoning was about to begin. The first salvo erupted across the void, brilliant arcs of energy tracing lines of death. The Deathworlders unleashed the full weight of their fleet, weapons calibrated to obliterate all in their path. Yet, before the beams could reach the human formation, they fractured, twisted by invisible currents, redirected harmlessly into empty space. Systems that were the pride of alien engineering flinched under something they could not quantify, a force born of human will. On the bridge of the lead human ship, operators moved in perfect unison. No panic, no hesitation, only the fluid choreography of instinct sharpened by necessity. Each command pulsed through the ship's systems, subtle yet precise, nudging probability, shaping outcomes, bending even physics into service. Missiles diverted mid-flight, beams of energy dissolved into harmless sparks, and the fleet's deadly formation began to stagger under a quiet, inexorable influence. Outside, the void seemed alive. Fragments of destroyed ships rose and aligned, forming protective lattices and guiding rogue projectiles away from human vessels. The debris of past battles, the remnants of long-forgotten conflicts, responded as if recognizing a returning species whose ingenuity had never been surpassed. Each fragment hummed with energy, weaving an invisible shield that stretched across the battlefield. Unbroken and unyielding, the Deathworlders realized, too late, that humanity did not fight conventionally. Their weapons could not be predicted, their moves could not be calculated. Humans were not merely reacting, they were orchestrating. Every ship, every engine, every flicker of light responded to thought as much as to code, forming patterns that the most advanced alien AI could not comprehend. From the lead human vessel, a subtle pulse radiated outward, and the fabric of space itself seemed to shiver. Engines of the Deathworlder Fleet struggled, systems overloaded by forces that defied calculation. Their fleets, masters of countless star systems, now wavered, unsure whether to advance or retreat. Fear had no words here, it was a presence, palpable and undeniable. The human crew did not celebrate. They moved with calm precision, redirecting energy, adjusting shields, and guiding their allies with a quiet authority that left no room for error. Every decision was immediate, instinctive, and unerring. Humanity had survived countless sieges, endured impossible odds, and now the galaxy bore witness to the same unwavering resolve. Above them, the stars seemed to bend subtly, light stretching and refracting as though the cosmos itself acknowledged the audacity of one species defying expectation. Ships that had scoured galaxies now hesitated, their AI struggling against the unpredictable brilliance of human tactics. Each attempted maneuver was countered before it could be executed. Probability itself seemed to bow, then came the moment that would echo through the cosmos. The lead human ship surged forward, engines blazing, weaving through the fleet with impossible precision. Energy from orbiting debris aligned, forming barriers and countermeasures that transformed the battlefield into a shifting web, trapping enemy vessels in patterns they could neither predict nor escape. The Deathworlders realized with dawning horror that humanity had anticipated every move, every attack had been turned against them before it had begun, and still, the humans did not strike in anger. They moved in perfect rhythm with the battle itself, using intellect and intuition as their weapons. The fleet's advance slowed, hesitated, then splintered under the subtle yet absolute force of human mastery. It was not merely survival, it was artistry, strategy, and defiance wrapped into one undeniable truth: humans were never to be underestimated. From the heart of the human formation, a signal pulsed outward. Not words, not fire, but presence, a quiet, overwhelming declaration. The Deathworlders, mighty hunters of countless worlds, faltered. Machines, systems, and minds strained against an influence they could not measure. The galaxy, for a single suspended moment, realized that humanity had returned. Not broken, not begging. Not begging for mercy, but awake, aware, and unstoppable. The battle had begun, but the war had already been decided. The void itself seemed to bend beneath the presence of humanity. Starships that had once inspired terror now stalled, engines thrumming against invisible currents they could not overcome. The humans did not fire blindly, they orchestrated, weaving energy, matter, and movement into a lattice of inevitability. Every strike the Deathworlders launched was anticipated, every maneuver countered before it began. The fleet's commanders exchanged silent acknowledgments. These were no ordinary humans, they were a force that redefined the rules of engagement, from orbiting debris to shattered satellites. Every fragment of spaceborne wreckage responded to subtle pulses of energy from the human fleet. Shields flickered into existence where none had been, debris aligned into barriers and countermeasures, and the very battlefield became a tool of strategy. Alien captains struggled to calculate, AI processors strained and whined under constant interference, but nothing could predict the unpredictable genius of a species forged by necessity and survival. The human flagship moved like a conductor of a cosmic symphony. Its engines traced arcs of impossible angles, weaving between enemy vessels with precision no algorithm could match. Energy arcs flared outward, redirecting assaults, fracturing beams, and turning missiles into harmless displays of light. It was not brute force, it was mastery. The humans did not destroy indiscriminately. They dismantled advantage, outsmarted precision, and turned the galaxy's finest weapons into instruments of their own design. Amid the chaos, human ingenuity revealed itself in astonishing forms. Ancient satellites, long dormant, rotated into perfect alignment, creating a network of communication and defense invisible to the Deathworlders. Rogue projectiles collided mid-flight, forming floating shields that pulsed with energy. Even gravitational anomalies were subtly manipulated, nudging enemy ships off course, forcing them into predictable patterns they could not escape. The humans had become more than a fleet, they were the battlefield itself. The Deathworlders faltered as a subtle pattern emerged. Their formations splintered under forces they could not measure, every system struggling against the impossible. And yet humanity did not strike with malice. Their advantage was patience, their weapon intelligence. Every move was a message, defiance, pride, and mastery over what the galaxy had believed to be invincible. Above the battlefield, the stars seemed to shimmer in recognition. Light bent and reflected along energy arcs, tracing the human fleet's paths with elegant precision. The void was no longer a place of fear, it had become a canvas, painted with the artistry of survival. Determination and intellect. In the center of the battlefield, the lead human ship raised a subtle pulse, and the surrounding space responded. Debris and energy aligned into a lattice so intricate that it ensnared enemy vessels without a shot fired. Alien commanders, for the first time, felt the overwhelming presence of a species that refused to yield. Every calculation, every prediction, failed to encompass the scale of human ingenuity. The human crews, calm and resolute, did not cheer or gloat. Their eyes scanned the field, analyzing, adapting, improving. The fleet was small, the numbers dwarfed by the Deathworlders, yet every human moved as though they were infinite. Every action was precise, deliberate, and impactful. From the heart of the lead ship, a pulse of light radiated outward, subtle but undeniable. It was not a weapon, not an attack, but a signal. A statement to the universe: humans endure. Humans adapt. Humans overcome. The Deathworlders, mighty and feared, recoiled before it, sensing a force that could not be measured or contained. The battle had transformed. No longer simply conflict, it had become a demonstration. The galaxy had underestimated humanity at its own peril. The tide was not turned by firepower alone, it was turned by mind, by instinct, by the quiet, unwavering certainty of a species that had survived against all odds. The void trembled. The alien fleet staggered. And humanity, small in number but infinite in resolve, pressed onward, shaping the battlefield into a testament of ingenuity and defiance. The galaxy would never forget the moment Earth's children stood, unbowed, unbroken, and unstoppable. Here is part 5 of your HFY cinematic story, longer and escalating the tension, showing humanity's ingenuity and defiance against the Deathworlder fleet. The battlefield stretched across light years, yet every fragment of space seemed to bend to human will. The Deathworlder fleet, once a symphony of precise, cold calculation, faltered under pressures no algorithm could predict. Each attack they launched dissolved into chaos, each maneuver countered by humans who anticipated, adapted, and evolved mid-battle with flawless instinct. On the human flagship, hands moved over controls like extensions of thought. Engineers recalibrated shields in real time, weapons systems adapted to trajectories before they were fired, and energy flows redirected themselves along pathways that the aliens could not imagine. Every moment was alive with possibility, every decision a brushstroke in a masterpiece of survival and defiance. Humanity had turned the void itself into both weapon and shield. Debris from destroyed ships and satellites aligned into lattices, forming protective barriers that seemed to anticipate every assault. Rogue missiles were deflected, energy beams fractured and redirected. And alien vessels found themselves ensnared not by brute force, but by invisible patterns that humans orchestrated with elegance and precision. Their ingenuity was not learned, it was innate, honed over centuries of surviving impossibility. The Deathworlders struggled to maintain cohesion. Their warships, masters of countless battles, now collided with debris, misfired weapons into one another, and hesitated in maneuvers that should have been instinct. Commanders whispered through holographic links, trying to reconcile what they could not compute. Humans were not simply surviving, they were dominating through intellect and adaptability. From orbiting debris, humans extended control over energy flows, bending magnetic and gravitational fields with subtle pulses. Ships that had relied on cold calculation now faced dynamic obstacles that changed in real time. Calculations failed, AI processors overloaded, and the fleet's perfect formations became chaotic, fracturing like glass under a precise strike. In the midst of this, the human crews remained calm. No words of fear, no frantic commands, only measured movements and quiet focus. Every crew member knew their place, every ship moved in harmony, every pulse of energy was deliberate. They did not need superior numbers, their advantage was understanding, instinct, and a refusal to yield. The Deathworlder flagship fired a concentrated strike. An attempt to collapse the human formation at its heart. The energy pulse, immense and deadly, raced across the void, but it was not met with panic. Instead, the human fleet seemed to breathe around it. Shields reformed mid-strike, debris deflected the pulse, and subtle gravitational shifts bent it harmlessly past the formation. The alien commanders watched in disbelief, realizing that every ounce of their strength had been neutralized by ingenuity and willpower. Human ships surged forward, not in desperation, but in inevitability. Each maneuver, each shift of position, created new advantages, ensnaring enemy vessels in calculated traps without ever firing a shot. The Deathworlder Fleet, masters of countless worlds, now moved as though constrained by invisible hands, unable to respond to the fluid brilliance of human tactics. In the center of the formation, the lead human vessel pulsed with a radiant light that rippled across the battlefield. It was a signal, not of surrender, not of attack, but of authority. The very fabric of space seemed to hum in response. Alien vessels faltered, weapons systems shorted, AI commands conflicted with one another. Humanity was not merely fighting, they were reshaping reality itself, bending the rules of engagement to their unyielding will. A single human officer, calm amid chaos, raised a hand. The fleet responded. Energy flows aligned. Shields strengthened, and every ship moved as if guided by thought alone. The Deathworlders, once unstoppable, now faced the full force of a species they had dismissed, underestimated, and mocked. The tide of the battle turned. Alien ships collided with each other, misfired their weapons, and broke formation. Calculated strikes were nullified by human ingenuity. Probability itself seemed to yield to instinct, and for every Deathworlder that attacked, another found itself caught in a pattern it could not escape. From the heart of the human formation, the SOS that had summoned this battle pulsed outward once more. It was not a plea, it was a command. Every signal, every pulse of energy, every subtle adjustment reminded the galaxy of one immutable truth. Humans endure, adapt, and triumph where others fail. The Deathworlders, mighty and feared across the stars, recoiled before the unstoppable resolve of a species that had never bowed, never broken, and never surrendered. Humanity had transformed the battlefield, asserting not only survival but dominance through intellect, strategy, and an unshakable will. And in the silence that followed the first crushing wave of human ingenuity, the galaxy realized, this was not the awakening of a few. This was the return of an entire species, unbroken, unstoppable, and undeniable. The stars themselves seemed to pulse in recognition of defiance. The humans did not celebrate, they simply moved, precise, unyielding, and eternal in their purpose. The universe had learned, at last, the true meaning of humanity. The void trembled with anticipation as the last of the Deathworlder fleet faltered. Their once pristine formation lay fractured, drifting amidst the human-engineered lattice of energy, debris, and light. Calculations had failed, strategies collapsed, and the greatest warriors of countless worlds faced a species they could not anticipate, could not outthink, and could not contain. The humans did not rush in for glory. They advanced with quiet certainty, each vessel a moving testament to ingenuity and will. Engines pulsed with purpose. Shields glowed in synchronized brilliance, and weapons systems aligned only when necessary, every act deliberate, precise, and unyielding. They were not just surviving, they were commanding the battlefield itself. The lead human ship surged forward, light trailing in arcs that defied expectation. Alien captains scrambled to respond, but it was too late. Gravitational distortions, debris barriers, and energy fields had reshaped the void into an instrument of human design. The Deathworlder's strikes found no targets, their coordinated maneuvers dissolved into chaotic collisions, and their fleet became trapped in a web of inevitability. From the flagship's bridge, the commanding officer observed the orchestration with calm resolve. Each pulse of energy, each micro-adjustment of position, each redirection of an attack was part of a symphony only humans could conduct. The galaxy had called them insignificant, extinct, and naive. The universe would remember them as unstoppable. The Deathworlders, whose names had once made empires quiver, now faced a force that transcended mere firepower. Humans had weaponized intellect, instinct, and defiance itself. Ships floundered, AI systems malfunctioned, and commanders recognized, too late, that they were not facing a battle of might, but a demonstration of human inevitability. Across the void, the human fleet moved as one, guided by a singular understanding: survival was not enough. Dominance was measured not in destruction, but in the ability to shape the battlefield, to bend the impossible into reality, to turn fear into awe. The Deathworlders began retreating, hesitant, their systems failing under the relentless pressure of human ingenuity. In the center of the formation, the flagship released a pulse so profound it resonated across light years. It was not a weapon, not an attack, it was a declaration. Humanity had arrived. They had endured. They had conquered expectation itself. Every alien vessel that remained intact now carried the weight of realization. Humans were not to be trifled with, underestimated, or mocked. The battlefield quieted, the void stilling as the last of the Deathworlders withdrew. Beaten not merely by strength, but by a species' refusal to yield. Human ships held formation, engines glowing softly, lights tracing arcs of elegance and precision. The war had ended, yet the message carried far beyond the stars. Earth's children were back, unbroken, and unstoppable, and as the fleet turned toward the distant light of their homeworld, a single voice echoed across the comms: calm, unflinching, and resolute, we endure. We adapt. We remain. The universe fell silent, and for the first time, it truly listened.